Welcome, Savvy Seeker, to the Spiritual Phoenix podcast. This is your audio oasis and paranormal portal. You can experience legendary guests, thought-provoking tarot readings, astonishing astrological forecasts, and exposure to ideas intent on igniting your unlimited inspiration. Subscribe today to keep your fire burning. One last thing, you are encouraged to reach out and ask questions. Become a part of the show. Now, please enjoy today's episode. Hello, Michael. How are you doing today, brother?
I'm doing really well. I'm really excited to be on the Spiritual Phoenix. Long time listener, first time caller.
Yeah, dude, it's great to have you on. I've been asking you to come on since we first started chatting, I want to say, but you were still in the broom closet, as people say. So happy that you've come out, at least part way.
Yeah, so that joke with the broom closet is like such a clever play on words. I love it. Maybe it's not that clever, but I don't know. Just we revealed my level of humor or whatever. But yeah, basically, I was like, we've known each other for a good while, back and forth chatting. You were there for, I don't know, a couple of years. I think probably like a few years ago, we were both pretty much at the start of kind of branching out as with like spirituality and some kind of business or like way to make a living. I think we were probably both at the start of that, a couple of years ago, or 3 or 4 years ago now.
Yeah, coming up on 3 years. I started all of this stuff in like October of 2016. So approaching 3 years, man.
Yeah, so you're right. I was kind of I'm still a little bit in the broom closet. Hey, but basically, like what I mean by that is like so I had this like series of like crises. There's a crisis. Crisis. That's great.
Crises. No. Sorry. Go ahead.
About I started doing this spirituality thing like tarot and Reiki and all this stuff. And like pretty much no one in my circle that I kind of knew when I was getting into it was at the least bit interested in that stuff. And I think I kind of presumed that they would think it was a bit daft or a bit stupid or whatever. So just kind of kept it under my hat. And then, as it became more of a thing, we started joining Facebook groups. You start like writing stuff, you start offering, tarot readings or whatever. And, I kind of made the decision to keep that to myself as well, to kind of not like publish it, to like only post in like private Facebook groups so people wouldn't know, and yeah, since then it's kind of, I know, and then people start adding me from the group and I'm like, oh, no, I can't, I must maintain the barrier or whatever, and it's became this weird thing. And I remember like the first time a friend of mine down here, so I'm from Scotland, but I live in Uruguay. So one of my friends down here, like, he invited me to something on a Saturday, and I had this whole witchy weekend planned. Like my flatmate was out of the house for the weekend, so I was like, oh my god, I'm gonna be so like magical. And so I was like, oh, sorry man, I can't. He was like, why? And I was like, oh, I do magic. And he was like, oh, don't laugh. And he was like, no, you can tell me anything. I don't know what he thought I was gonna say. Like, could have been anything. And so I was like, oh, I study like magic. He was like, you mean like card tricks and rabbits or what? And I was like, no, man, like bending, I think I said like bending physical reality to my will or whatever. And he was like, right, but it was kind of like, he was like, okay, that's cool. That's what you're into. That's fine. Like, why is it such a big deal? And, since then I was kind of like, you know what, why is it a big deal? Like it's just kind of like a set of spiritual beliefs or whatever, but becoming more and more at the broom closet. But for example, my page, like my business page, I haven't shared anything from that like onto my actual like my profile. I haven't even liked it. I haven't even liked my own page because there's like a link there.
I'm sorry.
I need to speak to a psychologist, I think.
Yeah, you're not accepting parts of yourself. No, I mean, I can get it from a certain extent. I really feel like at a certain stage, it's advantageous to kind of cultivate and build your vision for what you want to do under the guise of secrecy, because there's a lot of haters and a lot of people that have no vision that'll shit all over what you're passionate about. Sure. Because it scares them to see you follow your truth. So there's a lot of wisdom in kind of pulling back, and once you've established a firm foundation in it, like waving your magical wang in front of people. I don't think that's not the best way to put it.
Wand. I think we call it a wand.
Yeah, that was what I meant to say. It was a Freudian slip. Yeah.
Yeah, like I say, you've been spending too much time with chaos magicians, you start associating magic with your penis.
That's awesome. So one of the questions that I like to ask everybody is, what are you grateful for today?
Oh, honestly, right now, I'm really grateful for where I am. Today specifically, like right now, it's just after 12:30 where I am, and I've got a full belly, and just like friends I'm seeing later, and everything's just great. And like on a larger scale in my life, I'm just really happy. I've got loads of cool ideas, loads of like irons in the fire, and like loads of opportunity to work on them, and just be, things are just great today. So I'm just really grateful for that kind of sense of balance and just contentment with how things are, which is rare, so I'm really enjoying it, and I really am grateful for it.
Yeah, it's interesting. A lot of people will tell you, like, when things are going good, like, essentially to wait for the other shoe to drop. They're like, it's not going to last forever. And it's like, what a horrible attitude. Like, let me enjoy this. I understand that reality still exists, and I'm not going to, like, be on this constant upward spiral, but don't rain on my parade. And you got to, like, kind of suck the sweetness out of the moment while it's there. One of the go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was going to say that there is that. I think that, I don't know if that's like cynicism or realism. I think people who are cynical tend to think that they're realistic, but that's only because they're cynical. But I think, I mean, it's just, for me, it's less about we don't know what's, it's less about expecting it to go wrong. It's just like we don't know like if it will or won't. So just try and be in the moment and stuff like that. And, I work with a mindfulness teacher. I have a session with him every week, and that's a big part of it. It's like developing habits more than like the word he uses, like a formal practice, which is like a meditation technique or something. So it's more about developing the habit and being mindful and being present. And then that makes it a lot easier to be grateful, because in any moment, usually if you're worried about something, it's about something that's coming. So if you can be in the moment, there's like loads of stuff that you could be grateful for immediately. Just makes your life better.
Yeah, I definitely relate to that. It's interesting you bring up realism. I was actually thinking about this earlier when I was at the gym, which is actually one of my healthy habits. But anyhow, like I was thinking about realism and how ungrounded it is, like when people use that term, because they only focus on the pessimistic aspect of it, kind of like you had touched on. And then it also brings to mind like skepticism, how that term is used inappropriately as well, in the sense that like the real level skepticism means not having belief until there's evidence, but most people approach skepticism from the attitude of it's not real despite any evidence to the contrary. And then finally, like even with optimism is misused in the sense that people think that it's about always seeing the good, and it's sometimes it's about like finding the good, but also acknowledging that shit sucks at times too, at least in my opinion. Like I think a lot of those terms are misused or misguided, maybe is a better way. What's your take on that?
I think you're spot on. And as you're thinking, I think I realized that optimism and cynicism don't have anything to do with realism. It's like how you don't, both of them acknowledge that you don't really know what's going to happen. But optimism is like you're expecting, or you think that there's a strong possibility there could be like, happy times ahead, and cynicism is the opposite. It's just, you don't know what's going to happen, but you're kind of more inclined to believe that it's going to be bad times ahead, but yeah, like you say, skepticism, yeah, you're right. Is more about, yeah, nice point, man. This is gold. Totally. Just that it's about not believing things without evidence. And the realism thing, I think there's like, it's like a lot of philosophers. Like high profile example these days, like Jordan Peterson. I think he's an example of someone who probably considers himself really realistic. All those guys, they pride themselves on always like being full of facts and things like that, and not relying on feelings or whatever, just like cold hard facts. But the world isn't really like black and white. It's never really like that, which I think actually is the basis of kind of a lot of esotericism. it's like the world isn't black and white, because there's a huge factor that is, you know, your objective experience of what reality is.
Yeah, your personal opinion of the way that you shape things kind of gives you your unique flavor. And I think that's one of the things that I had another guest on this week, or I recorded with him this week rather. And his whole concept is that so many people kind of go and approach magic or esoteric studies from the sense of traditional, that they kind of forget to incorporate their own subjective experience in it. And when they do so, they kind of miss the greater depth of it, because it's really about what these symbols and what these structures, how they relate to you as an individual, and how you can harness the power of yourself through them by kind of stepping out of the pre-constructed paradigm.
I like that. And surely that's the same idea that, for example, like Jung's idea of archetypes, you know, that you can look in, you know, an example of, oh, damn it, I can't think of an archetype, but let's say, you know, you can use tarot. So like it's linked to tarot, you know, that you can see an example of like the Empress, you know, in any number of like films, you know, like Hollywood films. And there's like some mother who's like nurturing and like caring and all these kind of things that are linked to the Empress in some way or another. So like people watch that and they all have different experiences of that character, even though it's like the same archetype being like represented. But what like really counts is like how you react to your previous experience of exposure to that archetype. So who knows, like maybe your mother figure wasn't like that. So you see it on the screen and maybe you're kind of like sad that you're like, oh man, my mom was shit or whatever. That's not my case, by the way. My mom's pretty cool. But, you know, for some people, like that's the thing. So it's like the same information and the same, and it's not even information because it's like a symbol, like you say, you know. And that is the thing that I do know about like Jung, where he makes a distinction between symbols and signs. That a sign is something which indicates something else, but a symbol is the thing itself and also the indication of it, you know. It's because a symbol can't be simply, like it can't be put more simply than the symbol, which is like why tarot like fits so well with like Jungian psychology, because it's, I'm reading a book just now by Sally Nichols about Jung and the tarot. It's pretty cool. But it goes into that a little bit about how symbols, and you know the tarot is just a bunch of symbols that couldn't be more, you can't make the symbol any more simple without like making it more complicated, because then you have to explain it all. If that makes sense.
Yeah, there's this concept that I've touched on several times on the podcast, and I've heard it on other people express it as well. It's not unique to me, but certain things are slippery when you try to put it in words, and the more you try to speak about it, the more convoluted it becomes.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of either you know or you know, and either you know or you don't. And for me, that's like the basic premise of all of esotericism, is a lot of this stuff, there's an intuitive knowing, but there's no way to articulate it to people that don't understand it. And even trying to articulate it to people that do get it, it's more of like a head nod and a wink than it is like, let me lay this out there so you can actually grasp the concept. It's ethereal. One of the things that came up in what you were saying, and I'm curious about your opinion on this, you had touched on the archetypes, and this is a question where I'm not certain there actually is an answer. But somebody that I had spoken to earlier on this year, they had mentioned the concept that the tarot itself, the meanings of the cards are shifting, because when they were created, the stars that they were linked to are in a different position. And due to the astrological evolution of that, the definition of them is changing. So my question to you is, do you think it's possible for archetypes to evolve or hybridize over the period of time to match culture?
Smashing question. So, well, the thing, okay, so about like the precession of the equinox and all that stuff, and about how NASA, I think last year, announced that they found like a new constellation and stuff, and then I think in the official press release, or maybe that secondary source, people reporting it and stuff, saying that, oh, you know, got to like reassess your sun sign in astrology because now there's like 13 signs. I think that that like is a bit of a misconception about it's like confusing astronomy with astrology, because astronomy is like looking at the stars, like where they are and the constellations, etc., etc. Astrology is like an esoteric practice which gives meaning to things, and it's like a system, you know. So looking at that, for me, it's more it's about, so like the astrological system that we use with like the 12 signs and, you know, the planets and stuff. So sure, when Pluto was discovered, you know, we added that to the thing, but let's just say that it's like a system that's been in place for a long time, and like it works, you know. It would be the same as if someone said, hey, we found like an old copy, like the original copy of the like a tarocchi deck that was, I forget the exact family, but it was designed for some Italian like aristocratic family like way back when. And someone was like, hey, there's actually another major arcana that we didn't know. And then, you know, like, oh, all tarot is wrong or whatever, because it's a system that has been like fed into like so much. And I'm getting back to answer your question, just like filling this. It's like, so astrology, it's like a system that's worked. And so like astrology, sure, like the precession of the equinox, like if you look into the actual like like astronomy of the planets, like they're not in this sign that we think they're in, like according to astrology, like because I forget exactly why, but it's like a precession of the equinox, like the stars move, like our position in our galaxy isn't static, like we're moving around. So what's in the sky isn't fixed, it's moving like really slowly, but it's moving. So that has moved, but for that reason, like astrology, like, you know, Golden Dawn, they kind of like worked a lot on like tarot and like combining that with astrology, but they picked a system, and like that system is the one that we've been using. So that hasn't really, that doesn't need to change because it works really well as a system. Like it's kept that, you know, Aries is, you know, is at the start of spring because it works on like a symbolic level, you know, and it's divided up that way. So that's why it is the way it is. So it's, at that point, it ceased to be based in reality so much as like a philosophical basis for, you know, esoteric practice and things like that. So
real quick, before you kind of answer the second part of this, I just want to interject. What I think the person was trying to say more so isn't that astrology is incorrect, because this person is also an astrologist, but more so that the meaning of like the major arcana and all this kind of stuff is shifting, where the meaning of what it was at the beginning is somewhat changing. And I forget how they presented it exactly. And you might be saying the same thing, and there's just a miscommunication on my part.
No, I totally understand. I think it's absolutely valid to, and I think that it's important. And I think that there's a lot of work that, like really cool work that's been done to link esotericism to like physical reality. That is really important, and you know, it's really interesting apart from being important. But for example, if you look at the way that the tarot cards are like linked, so like the Empress is Venus and the Emperor is Aries, right? So that's like a planet and a sign. So for me, like the archetypes represented by the Emperor, the idea is very, very similar archetypes are represented by Aries. So in that sense, it's still, those two are still linked by the archetype that underlines them. And when you bring into it the idea that like archetypes and stuff change over time, I think the whole point of archetypes in like Jung's like ideas was that these same ideas have underpinned human experience since we were able to experience, since you know, since we were human beings. And that's where all these myths that have so many like parallels have all sprung up all over the place, because they've come from a place that exists in all of us as part of the human condition, where we have this like connection to the divine, as well as having like, you know, like the temperance card, you know, where it has like one foot in the water and one foot in the land. That's kind of human beings, you know, where we kind of straddle the I don't know, the border. We are like a kind of link between the divine and like the I don't know, I was going to say the real world. Why not the real world? Between like woo woo and the real world, that's what we are. And I'm really sure if I've answered what you said, but please tell me if I have.
No, you did. One of the things I want to say before I respond to what you said is it's funny that you mentioned the temperance card. That is the background of my phone right now, because I've been kind of going through this procession of, I started out with the hangman because somebody told me it was year of the hangman. Then I transitioned to the death card, and I was kind of clinging to the death card. Like I didn't want to shed the death card.
Cool.
And then I've transitioned to temperance. So it's cool that you mentioned that. But the way that I understand what you're saying is, the archetypal framework is going to be relatively consistent, but maybe the way that the culture casts its own consciousness on it can change. But the general concept of what that character represents is transcendental to any kind of time period.
Cool. Yeah, I 100% get that. But so if I understand right, that for example, so the emperor is like related to Aries. So like, I mean, the next one, I forget which direction it moves. That's either going to be Pisces or Taurus. So it moves to, but the emperor doesn't really fit with either of those at all, like on an archetypal level, because we're dealing with archetypes, like the two of them. So the same archetypes, like the warrior archetype would be one, and I'm not so good at naming particular archetypes. You know, I'm the kind of person, I love like Jungian psychology, but I've read people writing about Jung, and I've never really read much from Jung himself, which is something I should probably fix. But so in that sense, like sure, the culture shifted, but the same, like I don't think it shifted in the last like 3,000 years. Well, okay, actually, I was going to say, but the warrior archetype is still the same thing. But I was going to say that, and actually, the warrior, you know, there's a lot of people who see themselves as a warrior because they're like a single parent, you know, and that's this how they approach their life. And you know, if that works for them, then fucking brilliant. You know, keep it up, keep fighting. You know, people fighting an illness, you know, they're fighting. That's the way we say it. So in that sense, then that makes them, you know, like inhabiting the Aries archetype. You know, have I not understood what you're saying?
No. I think that we're saying the same thing in different words now. Like I understood your perspective. I guess the easiest way to say it is what I was trying to say to like summarize your point was it's like modern person, like the person itself hasn't changed for a very long time with the exception of how we live outwardly. But looking at it through the lens of each generation has their different style of clothing. So the archetype remains the same, but maybe some of the way that archetype is represented or shown off can change. Kind of like you're saying the warrior now could be the single parent. Does that make more sense? It's more of like picking, if you're playing a video game, picking the outfit for the character, but the character still has the base stats of that build.
Sure. Yeah. That's that. And by the way, like as a complete aside, that has nothing to do with the rest of the conversation. I'm the kind of person that I like with video games. When I was, I don't know, who am I kidding? Today I still play video games. So it's like I love like editing video games almost as much as I like actually like playing the game. I don't know like where that came from, and it's nothing to do with our conversation. So
you're fine, dude. So the next question would be like, I feel like we've kind of touched on some of it, but who are you and like what do you do? What is a Maechyl Boyle?
Oh my God, good question. So in 1989, no, I'm joking. So that's what I was no, so well, okay, basically for the purpose of this interview, I'm a dude who's interested in mystical stuff. So like, you know, reading stuff like professionally, like I'm a tarot reader, like a Reiki practitioner. And I know I want to ask you actually about your experience getting attuned to Reiki. But so I'm a tarot reader, a Reiki practitioner, astrologer, starting to do a bit more writing and stuff like that. I'm starting to get into a bit of numerology, practice a bit of magic here and there, not as much as I'd like to, but getting there. But yeah, just like really into like the whole esotericism thing and that kind of philosophy, you know. I like to talk loads, so this is perfect.
Awesome, man. Awesome. What did you want to ask me about my Reiki attunement? What's your question?
So like, I mean, which level did you get attuned to? Or have you done 2 or 3 or how many?
I'm level 2 and I'm going to be getting 3. It's in practical Reiki, which cool. I find it to be useful, but I think I want to go actually get Yasui Reiki, and I kind of want to learn a more traditional study of it because while I definitely feel that I've learned stuff in the practical Reiki sense, I was actually having this conversation with my mother earlier. Like, I feel confident in being able to offer practical Reiki, but at the same time, I want to learn the more traditional sense because I find it more powerful, and I kind of feel that there is fear baked into the construct of practical Reiki in the sense where even the term practical says like we can't stand alone without this, so we're going to put it in this form. In my understanding of the type that I personally utilize is that it was developed by somebody so they could use it at the Cleveland Clinic, which is like a leading hospital in this area, which I think is a really great idea. But it's also under the pretext of not being judged for being woo-woo. Sure. So I think that kind of diminishes some of it. And then also, as somebody who works with sigils and kind of uses different symbols and stuff like that intentionally, learning Yasui Reiki and learning some of the more sigils and having the more traditional study is more appealing. And then there's also, this is a final thing I'll say on it, and then we can talk more about you. Because I'm not here to talk about me so much, even though I'm my favorite subject. But the other aspect of it is the teacher that I've had for practical Reiki has been very lenient in moving me through everything. And this is counterintuitive to my personality, but I kind of want somebody that's more restrictive and more about like challenging my capacity to learn it, I guess, and seeing that I'm really understanding the principles. So for me, it was too easy to where I feel like I need something a little more challenging.
Okay, cool. That's really interesting, man. Like I've never, like I knew there's like different, I don't know, schools or schools of thought, or I don't know what the right word would be, like variations. That's kind of a neutral word, so just use that. Of Reiki, but I've never heard. I mean, maybe I have heard of it, but not by name of practical Reiki in particular. But yeah, I think what I know the Reiki I do is Sorcery Reiki. It's really cool, man. Like the day that I got those symbols, because I'm Reiki level 2 as well, and the day that I got the symbols was like so cool, man. I was like running around, like walking down the street, just being like wanting to like draw the power symbol or like the mental emotion symbol, like, you know, using my mind, not like a pencil or whatever, on like everyone that I saw like in the street, you know. And it really was just like amazing. I was like, whoa, like, you know, like that gif of like Oprah being like, you get a million, you get a I was kind of like that. I was like, you get a power symbol, you get a power, you know, all this stuff. And then actually, I just wrote like an essay about this week as we're recording, but I spoke to my Reiki master, who's Monica, about that, and because I'm aware that there are people who have a belief system which would exclude stuff like that. You know, like I'm thinking of like, in my experience, Christianity. You know, they wouldn't want something like that because it counts as like magic or, you know, X, Y, Z. It doesn't come in their eyes like directly from God, so you know they wouldn't want you to. Even if you offered like a free treatment, they wouldn't want it, you know? And I was like, okay, so I asked her about the ethics of like drawing Reiki symbols or sending Reiki to people who didn't ask for it, you know, even if like, you know, I feel that it's really going to help them. And she pointed out that that's like a huge gray area and it's best just like to kind of avoid it. And she pointed out, for example, on the bus, instead of drawing like Reiki on people on the bus, draw like Reiki symbols on the bus, you know, and like, you know, for like the bus to be like safer or more peaceful or whatever it might be. And I thought that was kind of a cool way around that, you know. And it's not like cheating the system. So like technically I didn't like force it on anyone. It's more like about just like a really interesting way of thinking about it, you know. So you can do the same with like rooms or buildings or whatever it might be. Yeah, that was just my Reiki symbol story.
Yeah, no, I dig it. I'm kind of jealous that you have the symbols, if I'm being honest. But yeah, I think it really does go into consent with how you go to approach it. And I think that that's the general premise of magic or anything like that in general is, are people consenting to what you're intending to do with it for the most part? And I think that that's important. Like not utilizing different magic with the intention of cultivating certain results.
100%. It's the same thing as well with people who do. By the way, someone. No, there's absolutely no innuendo in this, but there's someone drilling upstairs. Can you hear that?
No, I can't.
Cool, great. Anyway, keep that joke in because it was a great fake double entendre that wasn't. Anyway, so about the same thing that when people do like tarot readings or even like astrology readings for like celebrities, you know, and then post them on their YouTube channel or something. Like, I think that's like, you know, I wouldn't do that, you know, because it's like you're putting information. People are going to watch that, and you know, let's say you have like 100 people watch your tarot reading for Brad Pitt. I'm showing my age a bit. Like I'm only 29, but like I don't know the names of any like relevant celebrities. So I'll go with Brad Pitt as my like example. But anyway, people doing like a tarot reading for like what's going to happen to Brad Pitt this year. You know, people watch that and then that kind of feeds into it. It's going to like feeds into like the reality of what's going to happen to Brad Pitt. It's going to affect it in some way. You know, and the poor guy has no idea that, you know, Crystal Cathy 777 on YouTube has has like done a reading for him, you know, and it's kind of affecting his reality. So Reiki would be the same thing, you know, only do it when you get express like permission from the person.
Yeah, I definitely think that is that's a big deal. That's one of the things that my teacher of practical Reiki really taught me as well, is not to send it. And if you are sending something to someone who's like unconscious or in a position where they can't accept or deny it, just try to send white light or something like that. And if they want to receive it, they will. And if not, they won't. Like, there's some ways to do it where it maintains your ethics and where it doesn't cross borders, but it's something that like you really need to be cautious about, I would say, in my understanding of everything.
Yeah, I mean, that makes a lot of sense. Something else, because I do a Reiki ceremony every week, usually at the weekend, for there's a Facebook group I'm in, and I always like put up, like, you know, I say, okay, who wants some like free chi or whatever. So I put that people sign up, and then, you know, I do like Reiki to all their names and stuff, and that's kind of a way to make sure that people sign up, you know, to get around that. And there's a couple of people I know, like I have a cousin who's like an awesome like energy healer and like a Reiki practitioner and all this cool stuff. And I put her like on my list, you know, apart from the people who sign up, there's a list of people that I always send to. And I have her in that because I was kind of like, I know she'd be into it, but I never got around to asking her until like a year after I started. And I was like, oh, by the way, you know, are you open to receive that? Because if you are, then, you know, you kind of unlock all that Reiki that's kind of been going your way for the last year. You know, so I think part of when I send it, I kind of intend that it's like part of the whole thing that I do it is that it's going to people if they accept it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. What were some of your attunement experiences? Did you have any like definitive experiences when you were attuned?
So actually I did my level 1 attunement. So I stopped living in Scotland like 5 years ago. So right before I went, I got attuned to level 1. And at that point it was like December or January, and I left in March, and I like stopped my job because I stopped working because I was looking for other jobs basically. So I basically wasn't working, and I was just having a great time, you know, spending time with people that I love, you know, in Glasgow for like 2 whole months. It was amazing. But as a result of that, I was like, you know, doing all kinds of things, and I basically didn't do the 21 days of like practice and things. And as a result, I kind of didn't really use that attunement. And then a couple of years later, when I first moved to Uruguay, I went for like a reattunement with Monica, who's my Reiki master now. And so she was like, oh, you know, you've still got it, you know, like it doesn't go away. And I was like, but still, you know, I want to like do like some kind of ceremony to like mark the thing. And then I did like the 21 days. So the first one, maybe because of how I like, you know, like because of how I acted after, I did, you know, almost I didn't take it seriously. So maybe for that reason, I mean, I'm going to answer your question now, finally. The first attunement, no, I didn't really get anything. When I went for the reattunement, I absolutely did. I had this thing where I was walking around and I could see like people's energy bodies for a couple of days after. Like I really could see like the being of lights, you know, the, I don't know, aura, or I don't know what it was, but it was like this kind of like gold glow around like everybody. And when I was actually being like reattuned, we did like a kind of guided meditation where I, you know, like I went up, I don't want to say I ascended because that would be actually incorrect, as anyone who's you can attest. So like, you know, in the meditation, like we went up and went into the, you know, the cloud castle or whatever. That's how I see it. You know, saw it, so I seed it. Oh dear, writer, I seed. I saw it as like, you know, kind of cloud thing. Have you ever seen Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey?
Yeah, it's been a while, but yes, I've seen it.
Right. So when they go to the future and there's this kind of like council where it's like all these people sitting around in this kind of round thing, it was kind of like that, except it wasn't all like steampunky and futuristic. It was all like clouds and, you know, kind of that kind of vibe. And I went up and, you know, I saw myself as like a being of light, you know, and then I came back from the end of the meditation and I was like, oh my God, that was like super like transcendental. And I said to her, I was like, well, I didn't say fuck, but I was like, fuck, man. I didn't say man either. I said it in
He didn't say any of that.
I'm going to completely misquote myself and pass it off that I'm like cooler than But basically I was like, whoa, like I'm a being of light. Like I can't believe I forgot, like, you know, like why I came to this planet, you know, like to do all this stuff. And it was like a real experience, man. Like really like saw, you know, got like the blessing of, you know, some kind of beings. I didn't think they really had any kind of form when I did level one. And then yeah, for like for a couple of days, walked around and I could see like this kind of glow on people. And I really did the 21 days of like healing myself, practicing myself every day. And I stopped eating meat and stuff as she recommended. And after those 21 days, like, you know, meat didn't look like food to me anymore. So since then I've been a vegetarian, like just, you know, don't really want to eat it, you know? So that was really powerful on level one. And then level two, I went back to the same woman, Monica, and I felt like I was ready for the level two. So did that, and we did like a similar thing with the meditation. Went up, and yeah, I this time these like entities had like a form, you know, that I could see, and the one I remember is like Jesus, you know, I met like Jesus, man, and he was there, and he was like, give me a thumbs up. So it was kind of, maybe I spent too much time on the internet, and I saw that meme of Jesus giving like a thumbs up or whatever, but you know, I was kind of like in front of like the, you know, the council, I think is the word that like Alice Bailey, who's a writer I really like, uses all the time. Yeah, I was up there in front of all these like ascended beings, ascended masters, and I was like, you know, pledged myself to, you know, to like use like the Reiki stuff for good, you know. And they
Wow.
were like, great, man. And that's when I got the thumbs up. And then I came back and I was like, great, level two, here we go.
That's definitely an intense experience, man.
Really was. Yeah.
Yeah, people pay money for drug experiences like that, and that pales in comparison.
I paid for the level two to be fair as well, but yeah, it was, it
Well,
was
I mean, I know you
really,
pay for Reiki,
yeah,
but to be attuned, but I mean, you actually have tangible stuff that you can do with it after the fact, I guess is my point.
you're right. Yeah, no, it was really like, you know, amazing, and I think I had plans like that evening as well, but I just like with well, I mean, a girl I was seeing, and now she's my girlfriend. But I think I canceled them because I was like, no, like, I can't really relate to you anymore because, you know, you've got like you live in this physical world, you know, like I've met Jesus, let me just think about that for a minute, you know. Really incredible. What about you? Did you have any concrete or, you know, not solid, but, you know, any strong things like that?
For me, the level one was more kind of about like shedding a lot of emotional stuff and kind of this sense of like journeying. It wasn't really as in depth as yours was. It was more kind of just a feeling process. And then for level two, it was just kind of similar to the other one, but more intense in the fact of like shedding layers and clearing out channels. I mean,
Mm.
for me, I largely had a lot of transcendental experiences, like when I used to eat psychedelics or when I actually
Hmm.
like lost my mind. Like, so I feel like I probably didn't need to have any more transcendental experiences. Like, I'm kind of good on it for the most part in like a large way.
Hmm.
For me, I already had a lot of the understandings. Like, I didn't get to kick it with Jesus, which I'm cool with. But but yeah, I mean, it was still a heavy experience. And
Sure.
maybe when I pursue the other Reiki, I'll have different results as well. Maybe I got like the practical Reiki results.
Sure. Yeah, that Jesus, he doesn't just talk to anyone, man. You got to be VIP.
Yeah, dude, I don't know, man. I don't know if I fit the bill to be passed to be in the velvet rope with Jesus.
No, man, I'm sure Jesus thinks you're cool. Um,
That's what's
but
up.
right. But so about like level three, so that's something that I've been thinking about because I do practice Reiki like at least once a week, you know, like apart from like the group thing, which by the way is something I will definitely be doing, you know, forever, I guess, you know, some kind of like free like Reiki thing because um, you know, as well as like paid, you know, more specific, like, you know, people can book it like a thing, a session with me, and we'll do some like Reiki with them, like you know, and that's all cool. But definitely the free thing is something I think I'll be doing pretty much forever as well. So like I do practice like at least once a week, and you know, I try my best to like try and apply the principles like where I can. But the level three is like something that I don't feel that I am prepared yet to live the life of a Reiki master, because it's one of those things where, you know, you pay and then you get the certificate, you get the symbols, and then that's you, you know. But for me, it's like such a huge thing. Like, it's something I would take really seriously, you know. And you know, for example, from time to time, you know, occasionally on the weekend, I like to, you know, hang out with my friends and, you know, drink several beers or whatever, you know. And after I get like level 3, become like a Reiki master, then I don't think I'll ever be doing that ever again, because, you know, you're going to be a Reiki master. That's like a responsibility. That's the way I see it. So I don't know. How about you? Do you feel like a big weight of like responsibility around that idea of being like a Reiki master?
So for me, I already don't drink or do any drugs.
Sure.
So like chemically, I've been clean for close to 3 years. That's actually part of one of the reasons why I want to get a different attunement and go a more traditional route, because I'm taking it seriously. But as far as the responsibility for it, and I don't mean to say this in an arrogant way, I say this as humbly as possible, the majority of my life is focused on cleaning out my insides and living in harmony with everything. And while I'm not perfect, nor will I ever be at it, I've done a lot more work on personal development and cleaning up my insides and like living in harmony with reality and developing a spirituality based practice than a lot of people do. Like, and again, this isn't to like suck my own dick or anything, but I just did my second 6 step, and it's about like identifying issues within my character and how they sabotage me and myself. And I went through and I spent probably a month, no, more than a month, like 2 to 3 months actually going through this and really digesting it. And I've written about these 50 or 60 traits that I have, what causes them, kind of like, how do I act on them? How does it affect other people? What feelings do I associate with it? Am I trying to run from things by doing this? And like really breaking down how I tick on such a deep level, that it liberates a lot of my energy. And I don't think that the majority of people that go through that stuff aren't doing it. So like, I definitely feel that when I'm ready to step into that role, I don't have any qualms about it really. It'll be, I'm suited for it, I guess.
I absolutely. And you know, when I first saw on Facebook that you got to tune with your mom.
Yep, correct.
Which I think is so cool. And actually, I did a tarot reading for you like years ago, way back when. So I have met your mom. So tell her I said hi.
I will. I will. She remembers you. I told her I was chatting with you today.
Oh, cool. Part of the family and everything. So anyway, sorry.
You're all good.
Right. But you know, I remember thinking, I was like, oh, cool, you know, getting attuned to Reiki. And then I thought about it, you know, like the idea of like you as like a Reiki master. I think you definitely fit the bill, like, you know, really well, you know, more than I do at this point, for the reasons I just said, Joe. I'm not prepared to do that, but you're right. You know, I kind of didn't really think about it that much, but the way you've just explained it there makes loads of sense. You know, you absolutely are doing all the work that I think it entails. And, you know, I think it's really important what you just said about sucking your own dick. No, I'm joking. The thing about, you know, like about you're not perfect, and, you know, it's not about being perfect or trying to be perfect. It's about like striving to get, you know, just improve, you know. And I think that that's your whole thing, you know, as like the spiritual phoenix, you know, like just trying to get as far along this line as you can, you know. And I think that being like a Reiki master is pretty much what that's, you know, it's the same thing, you know, to a certain extent, kind of carrying the torch and helping other people and stuff. So I think it's really cool. And 100%, you know, Reiki master, go for it.
Yeah, thank you, man. You as well. I mean, I feel that there's trade-offs too, maybe because maybe you don't have to give up drinking completely because you've made other sacrifices where you don't eat meat. Like for me, I'll likely eat meat the rest of my life, at least at this time. It's something I've considered getting rid of. And I understand that there's all sorts of negative things associated with it, blah, 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 blah. But I think that it's more so there's negative things associated with almost every aspect of our culture at this point. Some of them are unavoidable, and it's a matter of making one commitment to one area that and this is just my perception now, it's subject to revision, but making one commitment to one area and saying that I'm willing to give this up in order to pursue this, like making one deep sacrifice. And for me, like, I didn't quit doing drugs and stuff because I didn't like drugs. Like, let's be really clear about that. I really love drugs, and that was my problem. Like,
Sure. That makes sense.
I mean, at the same time, I'm really happy now that I don't have them. Like, you probably enjoyed eating meat at one point, then you found out you were okay without it, and there's no point in going back to it once you're cool. So I don't think you have to give up everything to follow these paths. How do you feel about that?
I know exactly what you mean, and I think that I'm always in two minds where I read something by Alice Bailey. Are you familiar with Alice Bailey at all?
I've heard the name. My thing is, I try not to take on other people's dogma of situations, and I really try to go through my own experience. Well, I think that there's some things we can glean from other people. I really feel that esoteric studies and personal development is more about understanding yourself and not following everybody else's lamp.
Sure, I totally agree with that, absolutely. But I do think there's definitely value in, I mean, for example, listening to podcasts, getting and like reading books, by people, who are maybe dead or whatever, from 100 years ago. I think that there's loads of it that you can kind of take with a huge pinch of salt because they were writing the same way that, the Old and New Testament was written with like a certain subsection of humanity at the time in mind. It was written to explain to Jews living, let's say like the New Testament was written to explain to Jews and early Christians living under the Roman Empire how to develop themselves spiritually, and 2,000 years later, there's all kinds of stuff in it that's like, just looks horrible. There's stuff in the Old Testament about like it's pretty homophobic and stuff. And sure, people who wrote that, they included it because they thought it was relevant. And now it's like, just get in the bin, So there's obviously like things are always being revised and stuff. But basically, sorry, I was going to say about Alice Bailey, like it's really like kind of difficult to read sometimes because it's like so like thick, the language, but it's really good stuff. At least just for me with my big dumb brain where I think I'm a genius, whatever. But anyway, a lot of Alice Bailey stuff is it's like based on like ideals, So a lot of it's like, hey, we have this like duty as human beings to like be as like strive towards like perfection, and then once you get to perfection, then you don't incarnate here anymore, So like there is a part of me that's like, okay, cool. So like you said, dogma, where it's like, got to do it all right now, got to like devote myself to like spirituality, like 100%, just like serve. But then there's also part of me that's like, if I was ready for that, I probably wouldn't be here, or it would be, sorry, I'm just going to jump on the place, but I think it's like kind of learning curve, there's like stuff you need to get through and stuff you need to fuck up, so you can learn from in this lifetime and carry into next lifetime so you don't fuck it up as much, and then eventually you don't fuck anything up. But that takes like a long time. So I think to bring it back to what you were saying, that sure, like there's only so much you could do at any one time. So for me, I'm always aware of that, but also aware of like, sure, there's only so much you can do at any one time, but also like ideally we would all be doing all of it all the time, but we're not quite there. So I strive for that, and I do hold that as an ideal, but sometimes I have to pull myself back and be a bit more realistic about it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. And one of the things that I want to add is like a footnote to what I said. I definitely don't mean to discredit other people's experiences, because there's obviously a lot of wisdom you can gain from other people and a lot of the esoteric traditions and stuff like that. But it still comes down to the fact of you can sample it and see what works for you. But at the end of the day, you have to make choices of what resonates with your own personal philosophy enough, because you'll find a bunch of conflicting information. But as far as like getting to this state of doing all of it, for me, I think that there's a great trick in a lot of esoteric stuff. And I think that a lot of people are misguided in the sense that assume that they have to do all of it to get out of it. I think that it's more so about finding peace with where you're at with everything and not being a dick, and also not trying to be so saintly. Because I think when people step into this side of trying to be so saintly, they trample on a lot of other people, and they inadvertently they go to the other pole of things. And we've kind of had this conversation before, but to me, it's more about being centered in it and not doing it all perfectly, but being in harmony and not being that big of a dick.
I think, yeah, I mean, certainly avoiding big dicks is something I try and do. I could make another joke, but it would be a bit too vulgar, so I'll just move on. And I think you're absolutely right, and it kind of gets to this point. Okay, a classic example. Okay, a more established like spiritual tradition is like Catholicism, where there's this idea of like saintliness, and it's like perfection, and you go to the priest because and disclaimer here, I went to like Catholic school and stuff like that. Like there's loads. I've of all like the major religions, I think that I resonate more with like the aesthetic in a lot of ways of Catholicism, because it's so cool and so old. Like here in Montevideo, where I live in Uruguay, there's loads of awesome churches, because obviously it was a Spanish colony, so like Catholicism is like the major religion. And there's loads of awesome buildings, and I like to just like go in there and read, And actually, I did think for a while maybe it's a bit disrespectful of me to like go into a cathedral and start reading like Liber Null and Psychonaut by like Peter J. Carroll, like reading like chaos magic texts in this like Catholic thing. It's disrespectful, but anyway, for me, so you kind of this like appearance of like saintliness, and I think it's pretty widely known now, like a lot of like extreme like I'm going to say the word heinous, speaking of Bill and Ted, extremely like heinous like acts that have gone on in the name of like the Catholic Church, so but we see that in a far I'm not like saying to the same thing, in a far lesser thing, where you get this appearance of like saintliness from I think it's like at a kind of a stage of like of new age people where and again, I'm absolutely guilty of this, like I'm like I said, like Reiki healer or whatever, and then they'll say, oh, thanks so much, like smile, and then I'll be like, oh fuck, we don't have any fucking food in the fridge, and then like just have like a little tantrum or whatever, like I'm absolutely still like working on this stuff myself, but there is this kind of tendency to kind of want to appear kind of saintly and and all these things. I've had like tarot, or I can't remember if it was astrology or something, reading with someone, and they were talking to me, and I was drinking like Coke, and Coke here, like it gets sold quite often in like liter like glass bottles, and I'm an absolute fiend for Coke, so I'll just like tan a whole like liter bottle by myself, just straight out the glass bottle. So like she's like telling me like, oh yes, that relates to my relationship, whatever, and I'm like drinking this, and then halfway through, she's like, oh my god, because I pointed out something, she had something to do with Scorpio in her chart, which essentially is means that she's got a kind of strong link towards something that's kind of like dark aesthetically, and I was like, depression and stuff, that's the kind of result of you not letting that out, and I had to explain to her, you got to find a way to make friends with your demons. One of my favorite singers, Andrew WK, he says like, you got to party with your demons, make sure they're invited, because otherwise they're gonna, just like in Greek myths. Sorry, I'm jumping all over the place here. Where I think that the Trojan War was started because they didn't invite, I forget her name, but they didn't invite someone to like the christening or the birthday party, and she was like, well, fuck you guys, and she threw this apple in that said like, for the fairest, and that basically triggered the Trojan War, So in a sense, if I'm still making sense, if anyone's fucking listening, that you've got to find ways to make friends with that dark side, And she was like, oh, I've never heard that before, And then I was like, I do it all the time, look at me, I'm drinking Coke here, and I know it's terrible for me, but being bad in a certain extent, it's healthy. And she was like, yeah, I saw that, And for her, she was like, this guy's a Reiki healer and he's drinking Coca-Cola. Like this kind of way where we feel like we have to present ourselves as like perfected already. But the whole point is like, none of us are, or else, we wouldn't be here to talk to each other in this way. So, yeah,
dude, I completely agree with all of that. I really think that the journey is accepting yourself as a human, and that's how you unlock your soul on a deep level, because it's not about fucking living up to these unhealthy expectations, because all that is constraint and refinement. I definitely think that discipline is important.
Yeah.
But I think it's more in the Taoist sense of disciplining yourself to get out of your way. And I think that most of to use your word, heinous shit that occurs as a direct result of people over disciplining themselves and making themselves miserable and then trying to enforce their beliefs on other people, or it's a direct result of not being in tune with their darkness and not letting it out in a healthy way. One of my favorite TV shows of all times is this anime Bleach. I don't know if I've ever talked to you about this. Both of my dogs are actually named after characters from that anime.
Oh, cool.
But the very concept of some of the later episodes, without spoiling the show, is learning to channel your darkness into a power that can kind of benefit those other people in your life. So it's not sneaking up on you and causing havoc. It's learning to channel it for the general good of situations. And there's this whole kind of recurring theme of him getting his ass kicked because he won't access this darker part of himself. But then he'll access this darker part of himself and kind of gain more ability, but be able to use it for helping people on a stronger level. And to me, that's like what most of this experience is a lot of, for me personally, I started out in the love and light and sunshine and rainbows coming out of every orifice that I have. And like, that's, maybe it's good for a certain point, but it becomes incredibly toxic and it becomes very isolating. And then it becomes very disingenuous. And eventually, for me, it reverted back to this state of frustration with everything. And now, like, I had mentioned earlier that I had the death card on my phone for a while. The whole death of all of this was really coming to accept the fact that I need some of the light. I need to not do it in such a stringent way, and I don't need to be over obsessed with the dark, but I really need to be kind of in the fulcrum or like this twilight space of both of them and say, I really need to focus on being the best version of me possible, but I also understand that I'm going to fall short a lot of times, and that's okay too. I'm not in it for the instant reward of being perfect. I'm in it for the long run of growing, and beating myself up and being so rigid with my discipline is actually unhealthy to me and everybody around me. And I create an expectation that nobody else around me can maintain and I can't maintain about myself. And it's like, I think that that's one of the most toxic things about a lot of the New Age movement is there's this holier than thou concept that falls into everything. And for me, like understanding that I fuck up often, and I'm never going to be perfect. And this is paradoxical too, is like a great asset in a sense, because I'm saying because I accept that I fuck up, I'm better than people. And it's not so much that I'm better, it's that I have more awareness of where I'm at, but it's also not better or worse than anybody else. Does that make sense?
It absolutely does. And I think that it's a key thing that like once I wanted to move on from or like to keep progressing, let's say, in my like understanding of like this process, and like kind of keep going deeper. The one thing that I started to notice was it became about more and more about like abstract themes and concepts than it was about the actual thing. Well, this is going to be like a hard one to try and explain, but so it's like when you fuck up and stuff, it's like cool. The fucking up is fine. It's about like the wider context of what it was and like what you're working towards and what you're working on and stuff like that. And I've officially now completely forgot where I was going when I started this. So
no, I think I understand what you're trying to say. It's about the interconnectedness, because none of those problems are related to specific instances. They're relative to a pattern that kind of stretches across your whole life experience. And for me, like when I begin to really understand that stuff, just as an example now, like I'm progressing in my business, but part of the progression in business is relative to humility and understanding that there's a lot of things that I don't know, and then stepping out of the fear of putting myself into the unknown and taking action to educate myself. But in doing so and learning these other principles in that, I've also learned that another area that I suffer in sometimes is developing lasting friendships with people. But it's actually relative to some of the areas that I suffer from in business. So all of this stuff is really connected when you really get down to it. And it's not about specific instances. It's about learning the underlying principles or the underlying defects or obstacles that are preventing you from acquiring these principles, and then cultivating the actions that can allow you to ingrain these principles into your character. Correct?
My man Ross Cessna just fucking nailed it. That's exactly what I was trying to say. That's what I wanted to say. What you gonna say as well? The thing, you're right. It is, and I wrote an essay on this like sometime last year, where I kind of explained esotericism as being the unturned stone, like underneath, or the unturned stone beneath the unturned stone. So it's kind of like exploring esoteric concepts. It's not that like you get more and more different concepts. It's like, I mean, there's only so many, but it's more about the depth of your understanding of them, that kind of the changes, you know. And then when you start to see these concepts and like the ramifications and like the ways that you can extrapolate all these ideas, that's where you get like wiser and wiser, you know. So I think like what I was going to say was that when I wanted to explore like further, you know, I kind of I forget if that's what I was going to say before, but now it's what I want to say now. So I feel like a lot of the beginning like level of spirituality is kind of circular in a way. You know, it kind of becomes like a roundabout without an exit, and you know it becomes more difficult to get out of it. You know, and then you kind of you feel that like the kind of progress that you should be making is to become like more and more like positive, more and more happy and things like that. But that's not really reality, you know. And I'm going to keep referencing my own works or whatever, but it's about I wrote another piece that's about like re-individualization, which is kind of how I see is like how I got out of that like circular thing. Was I had to like step out of the whole thing and like re-examine like who I am kind of apart from this like spiritual identity, and reassess everything, and then stop being so 100% on like service and looking for other people, and kind of recognize that like, no, like I have needs too. And you know, and nowadays that comes out in you know, so like I have like a Scorpio moon, so I need to, and my moon in my natal chart, sorry, in astrology it says my natal my moon is right next to Pluto, so I do have this like real need for like to express some kind of dark side, you know. So maybe I need to listen to death metal sometimes, you know, and you know, to kind of like scratch that itch. And I have like Neptune is like conjunct my sun, so I have this need to like escape sometimes, you know. And you know, for some people that comes out in like substances and stuff, but for me, like video games works just fine, you know. If I spend a couple of hours in Skyrim, like I'm gold, you know. It's like just removing myself from a thing, but that's like that came from like self-examination, you know. And something that you touched on, I think in your conversation with Katie DeMar, which I thought was really great, by the way, was about like working on yourself. So like, or maybe it's when we spoke, but it was about when you work on yourself so that you can be of better service to other people, you know, or like serving yourself so that you can serve others better. You know, I think that's a really important step in spirituality, which is kind of hidden. It's kind of like a hidden door. And so what I kind of want to do is, you know, make it more visible for people, because I wish it'd be more visible for me, because it would have saved a lot of time.
Yeah, I agree with that. But here's one of the things that I found, and I'm curious about your opinion on this. And then, unfortunately, we're going to have to close it down for the day, but we'll kind of leave this as a cliffhanger.
Oh my God, tune in next week.
Right. So the thing is, I think that hidden door, I don't think anybody can reveal it. I think that people have to cultivate the understanding, because for me, a lot of the personal development in esotericism is about uncovering your own panels, and you can't access certain things until you personally meet the prerequisites for it. There's a lot of barriers that are just intrinsically built into the system. And my understanding is there's no way of cheating. You can't game the system. You can't highlight it for people. It's going to be something that they'll understand after the fact. So it's more about leaving them a signpost for validation than it is about giving them, letting them know where the secret door is. It's once you solve the puzzle, the answer's in the back of the book, so you can check your work.
I like that. I think you're probably right. You know that, like, you know, the journey is the destination, man, or whatever. You know, like, you know, let's just admit it, that we're like big old hippies. But anyway, like totally, I think that's totally valid. That, you know, probably me like searching for all that stuff probably gave, you know, I might have found like this hidden door before, but didn't bother with it because it didn't really seem like much. And then only after having checked all the other doors did I realize that that was the right one, you know, using that kind of example.
Yeah, no, I definitely get that, dude. That's pretty much my life experience. So this is the last thing I'll say, and then I'll let you shout out your links and kind of, if you want to take us out with a closing word, you can respond to what I say as well too. Let me not be a dick about it. But like for me, I left where I live now, which is Ohio, and I went on like this vision quest, essentially, like an extended vision quest, I guess is the best way to put it. And I don't use that in appropriative terms in case anybody's triggered by me saying vision quest. I mean it in the sense of like really doing some deep soul searching for answers about who I am and like what I want from this life. And I went all around and I had all of these experiences, and I ended up coming back here like emotionally broken and completely mentally destroyed. But the irony is the solution to the problem that I was looking for was with me the whole time. It took the prerequisite experience of looking for it and not finding it to actually find it. So that's like the definitive concept of the fool's journey, like in the sense that I went somewhere I didn't need to find what I already had within me the whole time.
Absolutely. You're right. I mean, yeah. Well, I don't think I actually have anything to say about that because you just nailed it again.
Don't say that. It's going to build my ego up too much, man.
You know what? I think that, you know, the problem is that, not really a problem, but that both of us have this, whenever we talk, we kind of like big each other up. And I think it's cool. You know? As long as we don't take ourselves too seriously, because nothing is that serious. Life's too serious. Life's too important to be taken seriously?
Yeah, I can agree with that. I'll get humiliated if I don't humble myself too. I have experience about that, so I'll go with the humility as best I can.
But you know what? Like that's exactly what I'm saying as well. About you got to like know yourself and scratch your own edge and find a way to, like, in my sense, you know, this Pluto moon thing. That's the way I understand it. But this need for like darkness, I've got to do it to myself, or else it's going to do it to me, and it's probably going to be less, I don't know, palatable the way that the universe chooses it for me. But kind of the same thing. So you got to humble yourself before you get humbled.
Yeah, I agree with that. I 100%. So I want to thank you for coming on, brother. And before you take us out, what are your links? Like, where can people get a hold of you for your services? What services do you offer? Plug yourself, man.
Oh my God. Sorry. I've got a dirty mind. I need to get. So anyway.
Whoa, grow up. You got to express some of that darkness, but not here and now. Come on.
That's the other podcast. No, so it's, yeah. So I've got a Facebook page. You can find me, White Magic with Maechyl. We talk about that another time, but the White Magic, magic with a CK, and with Maechyl, spelled as it is the title of this podcast. I'm not going to try and tell you the letters because I'll Maechyl. Nailed it. You can find me there. You can chat to me there. So you can book me for like a tarot reading or a Reiki session or astrology, some kind of natal chart reading, or looking at your transits, or any combination of those things. I'm also, well, you're aware because you're involved. I'm in the process of launching an online magazine on esotericism as well, kind of based around the idea of trying to make the next step in spirituality a bit more visible, and try and, like, I mean, I love the entry level stuff, like, you know, it's brilliant and it definitely has its place, and I love how visible that stuff is, but I would want to create something that's like deliberately like separate from that, and it's kind of like the next stepping stone. So you're involved, in fact various people have been on your podcast are involved, including Casey Tamar that I mentioned earlier. So yeah, if anyone's listening and is an esoteric writer and has something to say, you know, and they reckon they can put it down well on paper, or, you know, in WordPress or whatever, then yeah, definitely get in touch as well about that. Yeah, or if you just want to chat about, you know, esotericism, whatever, just send me a message. You can find me, White Magic with Maechyl. How's that for an advert?
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I'll definitely put a link down there in the description or the show notes as well, so people can find it easy. And you can have the last word, man. What is your parting words?
I want to say thank you to you, Ross Cessna. I think that, first of all, thanks for having me on, because it's been really cool and I love talking to you. But just like for all the stuff you're doing exactly what I want to do, like with this magazine, for example, that I'm kind of, while I'm in this like intermediate stage in between Love and Light and Crowley, I'm somewhere in the middle, on the esoteric road, let's say. What I basically want to do is leave like a kind of trail so that other people can see how I did it and apply it to their own thing. But what you're doing is exactly that, because you've been doing this podcast you mentioned for a few years already. So there's this entire record of your journey, and I'm sure that there are people who've been listening to you all that time. I've been listening for all that time, but not every week, I'm afraid.
Get off the show. No, I'm joking.
They'll never hear this one. Delete. So, I'm sure there are people who listen, more regular than me, that have been growing alongside you. And I think it's really great what you're doing. I hope you keep it up, man. Because, also as well, even apart from the spirituality, the stuff you do with them, people in recovery and give talks in prisons and all this other stuff is really great. And I think I want to thank you and salute you for, I just did a salute, you can't see it, but I did, for all the work you're doing. So that's my final word. Cheers to you, buddy.
Thank you for listening. If you love this show, one kind review goes a long way. If you have a question or comment you'd like read on air, please send your email to staff@spiritualphoenixstudios.com or use the link in the show notes.